Good afternoon. I'm Councilor Deacon Knudsen, and I would like to call our weekly informational meeting together here on January 14th, 2008. And we would like to start with our report, our weekly report from our city clerk.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a couple of updates. One, concerning the citizen surveys. The pre-notification postcards will be sent out on January 25th, and then the first wave of the surveys will actually go out to the citizens on February 1st, and then there'll be a second wave on February 8th. I have to hand around to you their water bill inserts, which will remind citizens of to fill out the surveys, and I'm just going to hand some copies out to each of you that are being mailed. They'll be mailed between January 6th and January 21st, and then along with those, we've been working on for quite some time is a Granicus mail insert to encourage people to be able to view city council meetings online and be available for those people who are going to be watching it perhaps outside of the Channel 16 area. And in addition, on the back of it, it has information on how to contact their council members. So more of an informational water bill insert. Then to remind you all, on January 16th at 7:30 a.m., the Breakfast Club will occur at Leonardo's Cafe. The topic will be future growth for city, county, and school projections and impact. And so for those of you who'd like to attend, that's always a good event. In addition, an update concerning the election process. We continue to have citizens express an interest in running for city council seats. However, of course, the ordinance has changed, so now we don't file a notice of intent. So when they actually have either raised $500 or expensed it or have declared themselves to be a candidate, then they come in and file a statement of organization. And for those who have had officially filed through the statement of organization, those are posted at the city clerk's office and on the city's website at siouxfalls.org. And then in addition, the Charter Revision Commission update, the last and final Charter Revision Commission meeting for items to be placed on the April 8th ballot will occur on Friday, the 18th of January at 3:30. The City Attorney's Office will compile a report of the proposed changes to the charter and present it to the Commission at that time. And then I believe the final vote will be done by the Commission on the report as a whole. And so that final report, or final vote on that report, will occur at the January 18th meeting. And then finally, I've been emailed or spoken to by a couple of council members concerning the Chapter 12.5 conflicts of interests. Just some council members wanted an update as to the substantive changes of the law. There actually are a number of measures that are really more housekeeping in nature, but are not changing anything substantive in the law. And so for that, I have given you a kind of a line-by-line explanation, if you will, and the discussion of the meeting and the agreement of the council members who are looking to bring this legislation forward. Only a few items actually would be substantive changes, and they are probably not new to any of you. One concerns the definition of an advisory opinion and the definition of a complaint, both of which don't occur in Chapter 12.5 now, and that would be a proposed change to actually put those definitions in place. And then another would be to change a little bit of the language concerning the board's discretion with respect to rendering advisory opinions concerning Article 1 and Article 2. Article 1 is in current law, is the article for city officers and city employees. Article 2 has to do with the elected officials. And I think there was ample discussion on that, and I've given you some notes there concerning whether the advisory opinion should be following the policy of the ordinance or having some discretion. And there was good arguments either way, so I've provided those for you. And I think finally, there were some, there was some parallel in law kind of changes that were done, which were more housekeeping, and you have those notes before you. Also, one other change was the complaint procedure, which would actually just give a date-specific time when, if a complaint is filed, that the accused would have a copy of it. This would be both for city officials, city employees, and city council. In the past, there really was never a date-specific time. This revision would actually propose to have it within 2 business days of the filing of the complaint. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Back to the charter revision. So they're going to finalize their recommendations this week. When do they present to the council?
As far as I know, they intend to present to the council on January 22nd, a Tuesday.
It's on our agenda now?
It is not on the agenda now.
How can they present if it's not on the agenda?
You know, can I defer to Gary Caldwell on this question?
Sure.
Okay.
My understanding is that the request is going to be that the council consider walking it in on the 22nd. It can't come any earlier than Friday because that's the Charter Revision Commission meeting. If the council won't do that, then it will be in February.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Well, my reason for asking, and I think it's important, I'm not a big fan of walking things in because it bypasses the whole public notice issue. And this is a very serious issue that is going to come before us, and I think there should be adequate public notice. It should be calendared.
Would there be any other questions or comments? Councillor Stagers.
Yes, I guess what kind of lead time do they have to get it on the ballot for April 8th, to get it printed and so forth?
You know, I'm looking at the calendar. Oh, just a second. Can I borrow your calendar?
Of course.
We have to have notice published in the paper by charter, and though I don't have that with me, I believe that the drop dead date is February 7th, so we need to put that, actually, that would be February 6th, because that's the date that we submit our legal publishing to the Argus Leader.
So I guess I'm a little concerned. If we have it February 4th, then 2 days later what if we have a lot of questions, or I guess I'm just concerned that here we are, we're coming up to a deadline, and we don't have really much time to kind of talk about it. It's kind of like, hey, take it or leave it, and you can't talk about it very much.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Well, I might suggest a middle ground here. If the Charter Revision Commission is going to make their decision on the 18th, certainly that could be made available to the council and the public. But then again, they would make a formal presentation on our first meeting in February, which would, from what you've told us, would meet the deadline. I think that would give us ample opportunity. It would give the council and the public a chance to look at this, and then on February 4th, a formal presentation to the council.
Would there be any other questions or comments on this topic or any other topics that Deborah proposed? Yes, Kevin?
I'd like to get a response from the city attorney's office if that's acceptable.
It's acceptable to me. I just would like to double-check everything, but it certainly seems like a fair proposal at this point in time. If we have any concerns, I will let you know by email immediately.
Thank you.
Councillor Stagers.
Yeah, if we had a formal presentation on February 4th, couldn't we maybe have an informal presentation on Monday at the Informational or something?
Well, I would think there would be no problem with that. I can't imagine. Councillor Kavanaugh, do you? Councillor Jameson?
This is for Gary, but I think unless I'm correct, it's a formality that they present it to the council. They will make the decision whether it goes on the ballot. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, but of course, they want to advise the council of the work that they've done, and also it's the start of informing the public.
Okay. Moving on, would there be any other questions or comments about any other part of the report? Would you like to spend any more time on the Chapter 12 and a half issue and so forth? I just want you to have ample time to, thank you. Councillor Stagers?
Yeah, I guess I'm not clear. Are we going to ask them to see if they can come this Monday for an informational?
Yes, I'm willing to make that request if that's the consensus of the group. Councilor Costello?
You know, if we're going to ask them to be here next Monday, then let's just walk it in next Monday. I mean, I don't like the idea of not having these things calendared and scheduled, and it seems like it sure should have been. I mean, they didn't have to calendar their exact details of what they're going to be presenting, but it should have been on the agenda, but it's not. But let's just walk it in next week, and that way we've got, you know, some time to discuss it. There's no reason for them to come next Monday and then come back on the 4th as well.
Okay, Councilor Kavanaugh?
Again, I would request that we not violate our deadlines. If it hasn't been calendared, it's missed the deadline, they go on February 4th. We can dispense with 2 presentations. 1 is enough for me. As long as, if they have the information by the end of this week, they can make it public, and then they can present on the 4th.
I suppose I'm going to do a straw vote here with you guys in a second, but I suppose another middle ground under the circumstances, and I too think it's important for people to follow deadlines, and I know we have a very clear policy in place, the 10 a.m., the Monday before. I'm very well aware of that. I'm not trying to defend anyone for missing the deadline, but I would assume that another middle ground here, which is sometimes important in this business, is that it's very possible that the report could also be given as, well, I guess, no, that still doesn't work. I was going to say during the mayor's report, since it's one of his 50 boards and commissions, but I guess that doesn't really work. Forget that idea, because that would be the 4 o'clock, and so that's not what we're doing. So, okay, all right, how many of you would, you know, just an informal straw here, or whatever you want to call it, how many of you would prefer that we, in light of the fact that the formal deadline was missed regarding the Charter Revision Commission report, how many of you would like the group to wait until February 4th so that they can get scheduled on, you know, accurately? How many of you, would you just raise your hands, please, if you could give me a feeling on that? Okay, that's what we will do then, is thank you for participating in my poll, and we will ask for that group to present to us on February 4th, and we will move on. Councilor Litz.
I'd like to, Mr. Caldwell, will the whole group be here, or will just the chairperson or their representative, or who will actually do the presentation?
I can't answer this at this time, but I believe it will be the chairperson, and I'm sure, I believe that there will be members of the Charter Revision Commission present. Whether it will be the entire board or not, I can't say.
Thank you, Kerry.
Okay, with the mayor's report, under the section mayor's report today, I have requested the director of public parking.
Madam Chairman? If
yes.
I could interrupt it.
Yes.
I thought we were going to have more discussion about Chapter 12 and a half.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that. Okay.
I understand Jameson and Councilors Jameson and Staggers were involved in putting this together. Do you have any advice for us? What's the next step here?
Well, I think one of the most important things we've asked Gary to do is that if there's an issue that comes before the Board of Ethics that deals with a council member, that the city attorney actually be advising the Board of Ethics.
And this proposed ordinance resolves that?
Well, no, that's what we want to have happen, because right now, in the past, when there have been issues about city council members, the city attorney has not been involved. There have been other people in his office that have been involved. But with this particular, if we do have issues with city council members in the future, the city attorney would actually be advising the Board of Ethics.
So that, again, the ordinance that is in front of us, the proposed change to the ordinance, would take care of that issue for you?
I haven't, that was a suggestion, that's what we talked about at the last committee meeting, was for that to happen. Yes.
The current
We're working
language-
on the
Yes.
draft right now, and I hope to have it for circulation fairly soon. I'd hope to have it today, but we're not done. But yes, that will be one of the changes.
So the draft that we're looking at right here is not the final one?
No. It's not.
It's
What
not,
is-
it's not in no, there'll be additional changes that I'm recommending and perhaps some more discussion.
So I'm curious what this is. Could someone cut to the chase on what this document is?
Actually, this is the current, I mean, after the Gary Caldwell and Councilmember Staggers, Councilmember Jameson, and I had met on Friday looking at proposed changes. Those were the input. Councilmember Jameson and Councilmember Staggers are looking to sponsor the legislation, and so this was some of their input. Gary Caldwell did weigh in on these items, and his comments are included in red as to the changes. The one change, which wasn't unanimous, so I didn't make that change, which would have been requiring the city attorney to be the sole counsel for Article 3, which would be for city elected officials, which certainly can be changed if both sponsors so desire, or however you want to determine that.
Councilor Jameson?
Well, really, what Kermit and I were attempting to do was address the two items that we were concerned about. Those were advisory opinion and complaints. There were other issues that came forward that we were not aware of until that meeting. I think everyone got an email of some of those issues that some council members were concerned about. We did not undertake to address some of those issues because that was not what we had agreed to sponsor. That's basically where we're at. When Gary came to the meeting, he had some recommendations for some cleanup language, so to speak, to make the ordinance better, rather than a complete overhaul of the ordinance.
Okay. Councilor Kavanaugh?
So just to clarify, what I have in front of me right now, I can ignore?
No, I think that is actually the working draft that we're working from. Some of the cleanup language, which wasn't substantive in nature, which was proposed in part by me because I had a number of councilors' input regarding the Board of Ethics advisory, or the Board of Ethics chapter. In particular, there were some contradictions that just need to be cleaned up in the language, but there were no substantive changes on those items, simply just moving things around or making things more parallel, so that there was no contradiction in law regarding some of the authority of the Board of Ethics.
So what the city attorney's office is going to be giving us later is a further revision?
City attorney?
Yes, there was still some language that we wanted to work on. Frankly, I haven't really looked at this draft, apparently, that you did today, Deborah. I haven't really gone through it because I've been in other meetings, but I think what you have before you is a significant portion of what we would recommend be the final ordinance change.
City attorney, or Mr. Caldwell, would it be, could we expect that next Monday you would have another report for us, a further revision on this topic?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other comments on this topic before we move forward? Councilor Benega.
Obviously, since Gary hasn't seen this until today, he needs more time to look at it. But the other question I would have would be in reference to if we've asked the city attorney for a question or a concern that we might have in a conflict of interest scenario, how could you then advise us, both with the explanation and with your original conversation? To me, that would be a conflict. You'd have to have somebody from your office do it, or frankly, we shouldn't be going to you to ask for the conflict of interest opinion.
Generally, the questions that come to me are very straightforward, whether council members should participate in a vote, and generally they happen that night, and I wouldn't see that changing. I still feel that those are fairly straightforward questions.
So you don't believe that there would ever be a scenario where you would give an opinion that would defer or be different from the Board of Ethics opinion?
No, I can't say that that would never happen, but I think what we would do, those questions that come the night of the meeting, whether the council member should participate in a vote or not, I would answer those. Certainly, if it's more complex than that, it will go to the Board of Ethics, and if there's time.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comments. The issue for me is, since I just saw this for the first time 5 minutes ago, I would just as soon have some time to read through this also, to be able to go through and review the comments that the committee has recommended, because we have not talked about this, to my knowledge, beforehand.
Okay, we will look forward to the next part two, whatever part this is, next week. And thank you, all of you who have been involved in this project. Important topic. Okay, going forward now, we will go to our mayor's report. And during this section, I have requested that the Director of Community Development and Public Parking, Randy Bartunik, come before us to update us on the high number of problems we are having with people in our city not clearing their snow off their sidewalks, which has become a public public safety hazard for some. And so, Randy, thank you for being with us today.
Welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you on this. As you all know, and as Dee had mentioned, our office is responsible for fielding, receiving the citizens' complaints for sidewalks that have not been cleared pursuant to the ordinance. And what I've got up here on the first slide is that ordinance, or part of the ordinance. Item A, basically, or in summary, it requires that the sidewalks be cleared of snow and ice accumulations within 48 hours at the end of the termination of that accumulation. The next item that goes along with that, it goes on to further state that if you got a corner lot where your sidewalk is abutting an intersection or a crosswalk, the property owner is also required to clear that to the street. Next slide. The ordinance also states that notices need not be given personally, but may be given generally through the official newspaper. So in the fall of the year, usually in November, we do publish 2 ads in the Argus Leader, or 2 public notices, I should say, informing the citizens of that requirement. Then it also talks about that if the person fails to remove the snow and ice within 72 hours at the end of the accumulation, then the city can actually go out there, hire a contractor, have the sidewalk cleared, and then charge those costs back against the property owner. Next slide. We enforce this ordinance strictly through a complaint basis, where we are not out there driving around looking for unshoveled sidewalks. So it is all done through citizens' calls to our office. We do not take complaints until after 48 hours at the end of the accumulations. Again, that is coincide with the actual ordinance that allows the citizens 48 hours to clear that. When we receive a complaint, the ownership of the property is checked with county records, and an inspection form is prepared, and then the complaint is investigated, and if the property is in violation, a notice is given requiring the sidewalk to be cleared within 24 hours. Generally, through our normal years, we have 1 staff person that will go out and investigate these complaints, but because of the high volume, we've actually had 2 staff people that we've pretty much dedicated to this since the first snowfall in December. This graph shows you the historical information regarding the number of complaints that we received back from 93 to 94 season up to the current season, and you can see where we're at today. We actually have about 712 complaints for the season already, which is actually the 3rd highest, and the other 2, remembering that those are actually seasonal the total number of complaints that we received for the entire season. So we're well on our way to breaking a record there, which I'm not sure that's a good thing in this case. Next slide. Attached a few slides here just to kind of give you an idea of some of the situations that citizens are calling on where the sidewalks are not cleared and impassable. And it really does present a hazard for whether it's kids going to school or whether it's people with mobility problems and disabilities. We've run into, next slide, run into a number of situations here recently now since the last snowfall was on December 25th where sidewalks have maybe been cleared, but the crosswalks, if you back up just at 1 slide there, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, that's a case where the sidewalk's cleared, but the intersection going to the street has not been. And that really presents a challenge for people with mobility problems and, again, kids that may or may not be going to school. If you think about a person that's possibly in a wheelchair getting all the way to the end of the block or going several blocks down the street and all of a sudden covering this mound of snow, the intersection, it's kind of like driving for 3-4 miles and coming up upon a road closed sign. So it really does present a problem for those citizens. Go ahead, next slide. When we receive the complaint, like I said, we don't take the complaints until 48 hours after the accumulation, or after the end of the accumulation, and we'll actually send one of our staff people out there to check it. And first one, if it's investor-owned, we make one attempt to notify the owner if we can find the contact information. There's a lot of properties within Sioux Falls that are investor-owned where they're out of state or they're under some fictitious name that we cannot find the names of the owners. If it's a single-family house, we'll actually leave a notice on the door. But if it's multifamily and we can't find the owners, then we'll attempt to find the manager, but other than that, we'll just have it cleared. Property is re-inspected after 24 hours, and if the sidewalk has not been cleared, or if the sidewalk has been cleared, the complaint is closed. And again, if the sidewalks have not been cleared, contractor is called to remove the snow and ice, and the costs are charged against the property owner. Slide. Some of the things that we've been doing here recently to help get that word out to the citizens so that we can get better compliance on it is that we have last week did a video with Inside Town Hall with Jeff Muntz, and kind of talking about it from the perspective, again, with people with disabilities and the importance of getting those sidewalks cleared. We're also working on an informational video that will air on some of the other public channels to address that. And the other things is that when there is a snow alert issued, we're going to actually have as a part of that public notice information, again, where the citizens are immediately notified at that time of their obligations to clear the sidewalk. Next slide. We are looking at some changes. Like I said, due to the fact of the number of complaints that we have had come in this year, we are hearing some things. In fact, I had a representative of a fairly large developer contractor in town here tell me about 2 weeks ago that they don't even add or make any attempt to clear these sidewalks until they get a notice from the city. So we're, in essence, kind of becoming property managers for some of these individuals, which really, again, presents a problem, I think, for the rest of the citizens that do use these sidewalks. So to deal with that, in fact, I'll back up on that a little bit. This particular individual, in the past, we would have notified him on every property that they had. Every time we got a complaint, if it was a different property. And what we're looking at doing is actually changing that. Our goal here is to educate the citizens on what the requirements are, but we'll notify the owners of these properties where they're not in compliance one time per season. And if we got an individual that actually has 15, 20, 30 properties in town, we're going to notify them one time of what their obligation is regarding that ordinance. And if we get future complaints on it during the season, then we would just go out there and have it cleared. And again, that's the deal with, I guess, the number of complaints. On the flip side, we're getting the complaints from the citizens that are upset with the city, feeling that these sidewalks aren't getting cleared soon enough. And part of that, I can't argue against that. Last week, for example, on Wednesday, I think we took in 26 complaints. And the last snowfall that we had was on December 25th. So there's been plenty of opportunity, I think, to have these sidewalks cleared. Feel free to answer any questions. I also do have a couple of my staff here that have the task of going out and notifying the property owners if you got any questions for them as well.
Thank you, Randy. Councilor Stagers.
Yeah, Randy, you mentioned here procedural change. Is there any requirement that we have a change in ordinance?
No. The ordinance simply states that, again, we're not required to notify each individual personally, but what it does require is that we put a notice in the paper, and we do that a couple times every season. But our intent here is still not to disregard or to eliminate that. We're still going to notify the citizens, but what we're going to change is you're not going to get that second, third, fourth notice anymore.
Also, too, I have a
Yes.
few other questions. I've had some people tell me that, they have a sidewalk that's out in front of their house. It's adjacent to Kiwanis, and so Kiwanis Avenue. So the sidewalk is right up against the Kiwanis Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the plow comes along and puts all that snow on that sidewalk. are they still responsible for cleaning that off for the
Yes,
city? Or
yes and no.
'cause
If
they've
the
told me
plows-
different stories.
Well, if the plows go out and push the snow up on the sidewalk, the crews do come back with the plow when they do the pickup and drop the blade on there and pull that off. The city is not responsible for clearing the sidewalk down entirely to bare concrete. It's still the property owner's responsibility to do that. But what the city does is simply remove that snow that they deposit on that sidewalk. Another case would be is if you get 1 or 2 inch snowfall where the snow plows do not go out, property owner is still required to go out there and clear those sidewalks. And I know there has been some confusion on that.
Yes. Also, another question I have is that at the intersections, you had a picture there
Yes.
showing that there was this buildup of snow. I mean, the sidewalk was cleared, and then you had that buildup of snow. But what happens if somebody just cleans the sidewalk to the curb, and then they do not continue to burrow through that snow that has been left there by the plows?
If the
Is the
mound-
city responsible
Well,
for that?
if the mound is in the street, the city, we will actually contact the street department, and we will get that mound removed. I guess what we'd like to ask is I used to have a corner lot myself, and what we'd like to ask is that the residents that have corner lots in those situations, that they're good citizens, and try to make an attempt to clear that, rather than relying on city crews to come back on each and every one of those. I understand sometimes when you get late in the season, the mounds and piles can get pretty high, and again, we will work with the street department and have those areas cleared if the bulk of that is in the street.
And then the last question I have, is it your department that's responsible for contracting out with people to remove the snow?
We hire contractors. We do not do the snow removal ourselves.
Yes, because, we had a briefing on this, well, it's been several months ago, where some of the prices that are being charged to remove snow seems a little outrageous. Is there any way to make it more reasonable?
Well, keep in mind, we're not in the business of doing snow removal. We actually have one individual that, quite honestly, because I think the rates are too reasonable, they're a snowbird, makes no attempt to clear the sidewalk at all. They've left it to us that when we get a complaint, we hire a contractor, and they've just accepted that we're going to bill them. And we become their property manager. And we just as soon get out of doing and becoming a property manager.
Well, you're not...
As a property owner, I think I'd look at it myself and say that I've got that option. If I can do it cheaper, hire the neighbor kid down the street or somebody else. But one of the things that if you think it's high, which I don't, one of the things that would cause that price to be higher than a private citizen would be the fact that the city requires liability insurance of up to $1 million. And we also require a very timely response. So when we call that contractor, we're expecting that contractor to be there usually within 24 to 48 hours to have it cleared. We can't wait 2 weeks to have it done.
I guess, though, I just clarify, I don't think the city is really a property manager.
Well,
Because the city, those are city sidewalks. They do not belong to the...
That's another issue, I guess.
And that's another, if I could just ask one final question. Do you think maybe one possible reason why we have so many complaints about people not doing these sidewalks is that more and more citizens realize that those sidewalks really do not belong to them?
I don't believe that's it at all.
Okay.
I think the high number, quite honestly, has to do with the fact, the city is growing. You've got a lot more people that are out. I guess this season, really, with the exception of maybe today, has been a fairly mild winter. I think you got more people out walking. You've got a lot more people that are dependent on those sidewalks now as a means of transportation.
Councilor Brown?
Randy, of those complaints that we've received this season, how many of those are on city-owned properties?
Actually, I couldn't even tell you that number. Would you, either of you have that? Probably 5. And we contact the respective department immediately, and it is cleared the same way as a citizen would be. I guess the other thing I'd point out of the 712 that we've had, we have cleaned, I think, somewhere between 80 to 90 sidewalks so far. So we're looking at about 10%.
And as long as we're talking about citizens' health factors, there's nothing in the ordinance addressing hydrants and keeping those fire hydrants?
Not within this particular section of the ordinance that we enforce. I think the fire department, I think there is some sections, Gary, I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but I believe there is, but I couldn't recite what that issue is.
Are we doing a better job in terms of keeping our city properties clean? Because used to be not good, but if it's 5 complaints, that sounds more reasonable than in the past.
I think we've been getting pretty good response from the other departments, and again, recognizing that if it's the street department, for example, or Public Works, their crews are out at the same time. They're taxed equally with staffing issues, but I would say, yes, we've been getting very good compliance with it.
Thanks, Randy.
Councilor Benica.
Randy, do you have a breakdown of the number of complaints? How many of these are commercial or multifamily versus single?
We don't keep track of that. It's been, I can tell you, I know it's been a combination of both, but I wouldn't be able to give you a percentage.
And the follow-up to Mr. Staggers' comment is that if there's people who are handicapped or disabled, if they call the helpline, they will get free sidewalks, and they get free snow removal from their sidewalks from the
Yes.
prison detail that comes out and does it.
That's a very good point. They call it the Scoop It program, and the citizens that are low income, elderly, and disabled, if they cannot do it and cannot afford to hire it down, they can call the helpline at 211, or their other number is 339-4357.
Councilor Jameson?
Yes, Randy, when the people have been contacted, do you get any feedback? Do they not understand the ordinance, or do they do it for neglect, or is there
I
any-
think maybe I can probably defer some of that to either of you, but I think it's a combination of both. Like you mentioned, we've had some that are snowbirds that just make no attempt. We've had a developer that I personally got a call from that feels that they're required already to put too many sidewalks in by the city, so they don't clear them until they get a call from us. That concerns us when they're not making any effort to clear them at all until we get citizens' complaints on that. Because I personally look at that again, I think it really is a hardship for elderly, disabled, and a safety hazard even for those families that have kids going to school, where you're forcing, in some cases, kids to walk out into the street.
Thank you.
Councilor Costello.
Randy, and follow up to Councilor Stagger's question too, not every time that it snows do we remove the windrows or whatever alongside the curb. So in those situations where a homeowner or a business or whatever has snow that's piled up by a plow and it's not ever come back to picked up, what should they do in that scenario?
Well, again, the city crews will go in there and pull back what they push up if they're doing snow removal. But if the city plows are not going out, it's the business's responsibility, just as an individual property owner or residential owner.
No, I'm just thinking back this last snow we got. I don't think they went back and pulled it back off after the snow. And if I was a landowner who had, a sidewalk right up against, I'm thinking of Minnesota Avenue, for example, on that hill, on the South Minnesota Avenue Hill, I know those plows piled it up on those streets, but I don't think we ever went back and picked up snow in this last one.
I guess that very honestly, I couldn't answer. My understanding
But if that
was
situation were to arise, just call the street department
they
then?
could call the street department. If the plows pushed it up there, again, they would make an attempt to pull it back out.
And the last question I have was, and it seems common sense, but I assume that the sidewalk is considered to go across the driveway, or the
Yes.
driveway is considered the same as the sidewalk?
Correct.
Councilor Kavanaugh?
Randy, just a little bit more on the timeline. After 48 hours, you accept complaints.
That's correct.
How soon before you go out?
We'll actually go out if we start getting complaints after 48 hours, because the ordinance requires that to be cleared. We will go out and investigate them after 48 hours. We would not hire a contractor until after 72 hours.
I understand that, but from the time you get the complaint to the time you inspect the
Oh,
property?
it varies. Because, again, we kind of got caught off guard this year because we've always in the past been able to handle it with one staff person and be able to keep up with it. And just by the sheer volume that we've had, that after that first snowfall that we had in December, we got behind. And that's why we've got 2 staff that do that now. So some of those, it could have been a week before we got out there and investigated because of staff limitations.
So you think that's behind you now?
I think so. They've been doing...
So they go out and they inspect, and then they give the property, assuming there's a violation, they give the property owner 24 hours, they notice on the front door?
That's correct. If the front door is accessible, they've had some situations because of the amount of snow and ice that they literally cannot make it to the front door without, potential hazard to themselves.
So there's a notice left there?
Yes.
They go back the next day?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, it's going to depend on the number that we get in any one particular day. Like last Wednesday, for example, we got 26 in one day. How many days did it take you to get caught up in those 26? Were you able to get out to all of them within one day? Were you? So it's not just inspecting the first complaints. That's exactly correct, is that they've got to go back out and do the follow-up. So it is very staff-intensive.
So finally, after you go back and you've determined that after the notice they have not cleaned it up, that's 24 hours, right?
Generally, yes.
Then you call a contractor?
Yes.
And the contractor, you said previously you want them, get them out there for
As soon as they
within
can.
24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
So from start to finish, from the time that the citizen calls, it could be as little as 2 days
As little as 2 days,
or as much as a week.
probably a week. And some of it's going to depend, again, too, if you get a snowfall in between, if it falls on a Friday, a lot of variables on that.
Do you have callbacks from citizens?
On the same properties, we have had some, yes.
Counselor Stagers?
Yes, Randy, we let the public know when there's a snow alert, and we let people know not to park on the streets and so forth. Do we notify the public about when 48 hours are up as far as the deadline for getting the snow removed? Because, you might have the snow stopping at noon in one part of the city and 1 o'clock in another part of the city, or do we let them know you've got to do it by this certain amount of time?
Well, again,
certain
what
time, I
we're-
should say.
What we're trying to do is add that information out with the public notices that go out with the snow alert itself, reminding of the 48 hours.
But I mean, it's
We don't
48
know-
hours after the snowfall, isn't it?
It's 48 hours at the end of the snowfall, that's
Yeah, but
correct.
many times people do not know when the snowfall ends. So is there a way that we can let them know
Well,
that it's
we're
going to
generally
be?
pretty err on the conservative side on that 48 hours, and again, just by the fact of when we get a complaint and how long it takes, generally there's more than 48 hours. We've never cleared a sidewalk on the 72nd hour, for example. It
But to
just
have-
doesn't happen.
But to have people comply, wouldn't it be a good idea to let them know, when the time is up, you have to have it done by such and...
We certainly could look at that.
Okay.
Counselor Brown?
Randy, I asked this just because I've had some questions from some citizens in terms of abandoned properties, and you and I have talked specifically about one. Do we keep an eye on those when we know that no one's living there, they're essentially abandoned? Do we make sure that those are cleaned, or do we wait for the neighbors to have to call every
Unfortunately,
time?
we've done it and operated the program on a complaint basis, so no, we have not.
Okay, so those neighbors need to call
They
and
do need to
complain every
call.
time when it's not done?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Would you like to come up to the microphone, please? That way we can all hear you, including the listening public, please.
When it comes to a second complaint on a property like that, we do just go inspect it, take a picture, and hire a contractor.
Okay.
We don't leave a notice for another 24 hours.
okay. Thanks.
But the point being, we would wait for the second complaint. And what we've done in the past is if we actually get 3 complaints on it, then we don't even make any attempt to notify the owner at all anymore. We'll just go out and do it.
Counselor Kavanaugh?
I realize staffing is an issue here, but just to follow up on Vernon's comment, it doesn't seem fair that if it is an abandoned property, or just, even if it isn't abandoned, if it's just somebody that, doesn't care, just ignores us, that a citizen has to continually complain after every snowfall event about the same property. What could we do about that?
I guess we're open to suggestions. I mean, if it's something that, abandoned properties, I mean, ultimately, a lot of them that are going back through the foreclosure, the banks do have property or individuals that manage or are supposed to be managing and maintaining those properties. So even though maybe we get a call on one the first time the property's been vacant, they may be following through on it the second time. But we could certainly be driving by every one of these, but the more we drive by and start checking up on properties where we know there's been a problem in the past, the longer it's going to take to respond to the initial complaints that we get.
Randy, doesn't your new procedure somewhat take care of that, though?
It will.
Because if there's a complaint on an abandoned property once, in the future,
Exactly.
you're going to be...
We're not going to notify them. We're going to go out and we're going to go out and inspect, but we're not going to make any attempts to notify them anymore. We're just going to have it done,
So that they shouldn't have to, in theory, then the neighbors shouldn't have to call every time.
unless we get a bad winter and it snows every 3-4 days.
Right.
That would be the exception.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Bartunik? Thank you very much for being with us today and for your work, and we appreciate your staff's work out there, too, on those cold, snowy days, so thank you. We'll run through our committee reports as we usually do, and we'll start with the Audit Committee. Councilor Kavanaugh.
No report.
Fiscal Committee, Councilor Costello.
No report.
Land Use Committee, Councilor Jameson.
No report.
Public Services Committee, Councilor Brown.
Our committee will be meeting immediately following this one, and we'll have Carol Muller from the 211 helpline there and Judy Boozman, City Health Director, to talk about daycare regulations.
And Councilor Brown, did you mean that the committee meeting would meet right after our executive session?
I forgot about executive session, so yes, immediately following executive session.
Thank you. And now for City Council open discussion, weekly open discussion. Anyone? Councilor Brown.
Just an update for the whole council. Councilor Knudsen and Kavanaugh and myself, we were at the Whittier neighborhood meeting the other day. May 3rd is the cleanup date, so any councilors wanting to help out with that. The neighborhood's taken a real active role, which has been good.
And thank you for that update. And again, the next meeting will be Tuesday, February 26th at 7 p.m. In the youth barn that's part of the East Side Lutheran Church there off 10th and Cliff. And anyway, I know that the neighbors are looking forward to more involvement from the neighborhood, and also they welcome lots of involvement from the city council and any other city employees that want to be involved in this year's cleanup. So we'll just keep you posted on all of that. Would there be any other open discussion topics for today? Okay, it looks like with that we are going to end we'll consider our meeting, our informational adjourned. And may I have a motion to go into executive session for personnel reasons, please?
So moved, Jameson.
Okay, Councilor Jameson has made the motion. A second, please.
Second, Litz.
Councilor Litz, all in favor of that motion, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go into executive session for just a short while. Thank you all.
That will be in the...
Yes, and we will have our executive session next door in the overflow room, and thank you, Councilor Jameson.